If you ever feel out of control around food, you're not alone, and you're in the right place to learn practical, no-nonsense information about why you binge and how to stop. Binge eating does not mean that something is wrong with you. It's a natural but primitive brain response that you can correct. If you're ready for change, sign up for the Brain Over Binge self-paced online course for less than $20 per month. And if you feel you need personalized support, we also offer one-on-one coaching and group coaching. To learn more, go to brainoverbinge.com/subscribe. And I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to the Brain Over Binge podcast, where you learn a simple, brain-based approach to ending binge eating. I'm Kathryn Hansen, your host, and I'm the author of Brain Over Binge and the Brain Over Binge Recovery Guide. I recently published a second edition of Brain Over Binge, which has been out for just about 1 month. I truly appreciate everyone who has supported me through the process of updating this book, and for all of those who have purchased it since its release. I also appreciate those of you who left kind comments about the book on social media and through email, and those of you who left reviews on Amazon or Audible or other platforms. If you like the book or the audiobook, which I read myself this time, and you have not left a review, I would very much appreciate you taking the time to share your thoughts. It means a lot to me and helps more people find the book. I have a special episode planned next, which will be episode 99, and in that episode, I'll tell you much more about the new edition. If you want to read it, you can get it on Amazon and Audible, on Apple iBooks, BarnesandNoble.com, and Kobo Books. And I've included those links in the show description. Today's show is very special too, because a guest many of you know and love from our earlier episodes is back on the show. I will be sharing a great conversation I had with Cookie Rosenblum about getting over problematic overeating. Cookie is a master coach, author, and the host of the Weight Loss Made Real podcast. She has been helping her clients with weight issues and overeating issues since 1986. She has a master's degree in psychology, and in her work she uses a blend of psychology plus brain science, life coaching, and life experience to help people make healthy changes. In this conversation that I'm going to share on the show today, Cookie and I focus most on helping you see that your problematic overeating behaviors are not benefiting you in any way, and that any promise of pleasure or relief is from those harmful habitual pathways in your brain. Before I share this conversation, I want to say that if you are still working on ending the binge eating habit itself, that's where you want to focus. This episode is for those of you who have ended binge eating and now feel there are some other eating habits that are interfering with your life that you want to improve. And this episode is also for people who don't actually binge, but still listen to the show because the ideas that I share here are cross-applicable to other harmful eating behaviors like compulsive overeating or emotional eating. Everyone, even those who have never struggled with eating disorders, has to define what overeating means to them and the amount and frequency that feels problematic. If you're a binge eater or you've just recently gotten over binge eating, know that any overeating that you're dealing with can naturally decrease when the binge eating stops. And you can learn more about that in episode 47, which I've linked in the show description. However, if you're dealing with some too frequent overeating behaviors, even a while after complete recovery from binging, and you want to address those issues, you can get to work doing that. And hopefully what Cookie and I talk about in this episode will help you get started. Cookie, I'm so glad to have you here.
Kathryn, I love being back.
Absolutely. We've done several shows together, and today's topic, we're going to be talking about the illusion that overeating makes you feel better. And we're going to talk about this with the aim of helping you let go of any harmful overeating behaviors that you're struggling with. And those of you who are regular listeners know that a big part of my approach, the Brain Over Binge approach, is realizing that binge eating is not doing anything positive for you. It's not helping you cope with anything in your life. It's not giving you any true pleasure. And when you realize this, you're able to then dismiss the urges to engage in that harmful behavior, seeing those urges to binge as just junk from the brain and a product of the binge eating habit. But then what about overeating? Like, it's possible that you may stop binging, but then still hold on to the belief that overeating is benefiting you in some way, or that you need it for one reason or another, or that it's truly pleasurable or helping you in some way. Cookie is an expert in helping people overcome overeating, and she's going to help you today with letting go of any perceived benefits of overeating. So, Cookie, maybe we could start with what are some of the ways that people feel that overeating is benefiting them?
Well, the biggest thing we need to talk about is your perspective. If your perspective is in the moment, what do I need in the moment to feel better? Then absolutely people do think that binging or in my world, overeating is going to benefit them. It's going to take pain away, stress away, worry away, fear away in the moment. So the biggest thing is realizing that if you look at the big picture of your life, you know that down the road, there was zero benefit to eating more food than your body needs. It's when you're looking at it in that very moment and you feel desperate to feel better that you convince yourself that extra food is going to do that for you. And it comes from our background, Kathryn, from what we learned.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's like in the moment, there's this illusion that overeating or eating in a harmful way is going to help you. But when you step back or even after you do it, you realize that the consequences of it make it so that that behavior was not worth it.
Yeah, something that truly makes you feel better feels good when you think about doing it. It feels good while you're doing it, but it also has to feel good after you do it in retrospect. And overeating and binge eating definitely do not feel good when you're done.
Yeah. And I think that the different behaviors have different consequences after. And binging a lot of times has these huge painful consequences. And overeating, it may be a little harder for people to see the ways that it's affecting them. So I'm really glad we're talking about this. And I know that some of you listening may sort of be unclear on whether you are overeating or whether you're binge eating. So if that's a question you have, I want to let you know that Cookie and I did a couple of other episodes that address this. One is episode 72 and one is episode 25. And I've linked both of those in the show description. So you can check those out. And that will just help you gain a better understanding on what specific behaviors you're struggling with. But getting back to those perceived benefits of overeating, we just sort of want to help you understand that thinking that overeating benefits you, it's really an illusion, like Cookie said, that only appears in the moments before you engage in the behavior. And overeating actually doesn't make you feel better. And Cookie, can you kind of go into why overeating is not a behavior that actually makes you feel better?
Yes. So any kind of food that we eat, our body takes it in and breaks it down and uses it for what we need. But our brain perceives food as pleasure, as reward. On top of that, Kathryn, our culture teaches us that food will always make us happy or more relaxed or more social, or it will reward us for something we've done, or it'll distract us from something that we don't like. And part of being human is that we are wired to seek pleasure, to avoid pain, and to develop habits so that we don't have to think every time we do something, that it becomes automatic. So you're sad, you feel like you should have a treat to make you feel better. You worked hard today, here, have a little piece of cake. Or, oh, you did so well on that work project, let's go out and celebrate and have a big dinner. So the overall belief is that food will make us feel better. And here's the other part of that. We think we should feel good and happy all the time, as often as we can. So we don't want to take away the idea that food is pleasurable. It is, but it's pleasurable when you use it for the right reason, which is when you are hungry, not to cope.
Yeah, Cookie, I like how you brought up that some of the perceived benefits come from things we've learned in the culture. And also I love that you mentioned that, of course, food is pleasurable, and we're definitely not saying you shouldn't enjoy it. You definitely should enjoy it. But there is a point when you tip into those harmful overeating behaviors that it's just not actual pleasure. And the more you can see that, the more you'll be able to dismiss those urges to do that.
That's right. We have to kind of break down the cultural idea that we should always be happy, and that's our main goal in life. The way that I look at it is we need to feel the good and the bad. We need to be able to feel negative feelings so that we really could experience the positive ones. And in that moment, we don't know what we really need, but the discomfort is so strong that we're all trained to just grab something to get instant relief. And it's like trying to fit the wrong puzzle piece into that hole that's left in the puzzle. Food has nothing to do with your brain producing negative feelings. So it's like you're giving yourself a solution, but it's the wrong solution for the problem that you have. So we think we should be happy all the time, number one. And we think that food is going to help us even when we're not hungry. And they're just not true. But I think our culture supports that, like, oh, here, treat yourself. So it's our culture. It's what we learn when we're children. We get rewarded with food. There's so many things that lead us to where we are today as adults, and we're stuck in the habit. And we keep thinking it's going to help, but it really doesn't. We need to stand back and look at what we're doing and how we're using food and come to the conclusion of, hey, this is not working. It only makes me feel better for about a minute. And then I'm still left with problems that I had right in the beginning.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the reason it makes you feel better is it makes those urges to overeat go away. And in the brain over binge approach, I explain that the urges are the one direct cause of the binging. And you binge sort of to cope with those urges. I mean, the urges feel so strong. You feel like you have to do something to make them go away. So that's sort of the benefit that you get, is that the urges go away, but then the cycle just keeps repeating. And do you find that a similar process is at work in overeating?
Yes. With overeating, you develop habits, and the habit could be, either a mechanical habit, like it's 12 o'clock time for lunch, or I'm so stressed, I need to eat. And when we feel those urges, all we want to do is eat to relieve them. But when after we eat, we're still left with whatever was behind the urge to eat in the first place. If it's the habit, you're strengthening a habit you don't want. If it's an emotion, the emotion and the situation that helped create it, they're still there. So we're not accomplishing anything. It's like we're feeding a habit that we don't want, whether it's binging or habitual overeating or emotional eating. We think it's working in the moment, but it's actually not working at all.
Yeah, totally. And it's helpful to step back and see that, and to realize that any sort of comfort you may feel or any stress relief you may feel can simply be from those urges going away. Because when you have those habitual urges, whether they're linked to emotions or stress or certain problems or situations, like that temporary reprieve from those urges is sort of the stress relief that you're getting, but it doesn't actually help you cope. It doesn't actually solve anything. And one thing I want to dive into a little bit is that for binge eating, it can be really helpful, and it is so helpful to remember that it does not do anything positive for you, that there's so many consequences. It affects your life so much. I mean, people who binge, it could affect the rest of your day, the rest of your week. Like, it really interferes with what you're trying to accomplish and who you want to be. And I feel like in overeating, it can be tempting to think, well, it's not really affecting me too much. Like, maybe you're a little too full after a meal, you don't feel good for a little while. And I know there's different levels of this and people struggle with different levels of overeating, but it may make it easier to follow those urges when you feel like the consequences aren't as huge as the consequences of binging.
Well, definitely binge eating has more of an intensity to it and could have far-reaching consequences, but everything we do gives us a result. Everything we do has a consequence. Everything we do counts, even if we don't see the consequence in that moment. And some people may think, well, I don't have a weight issue, so what's the big deal? So extra weight, if you have it, could be a big deal, or maybe you're comfortable with it, or maybe you're not experiencing anything negative today, but maybe it will impact your future. But let's just take weight away from it for a minute. With overeating, you're walking around constantly having drama in your mind about what did I eat? What should I eat? Did I eat too much? Should I eat now or not? Is this good? Is this bad? And you develop these strong habits where you think, oh, it's just a little bit. What's the big deal? Other people have more serious problems than this. But today, your life is a result of everything you did before today. Your future is going to be a result of everything you're doing right now. So if you're overeating on a regular basis right now, it will count. It will show. It will add up. Even if it's not in your weight, the number on the scale, it's going to be that you are really solidifying habits to the point where you're going to believe that you can't get through your normal everyday life, never mind hard times, without extra food. And I don't think that's where any of us really want to be.
Yeah. So it's just about evaluating what it's doing to you and seeing the big picture and realizing that your brain, in the moments that you want to engage in that behavior, your brain is going to produce those thoughts like, oh, it's not a big deal, just one more time. But then seeing those thoughts as that neurological junk, as all part of the habit that you don't want to be following anymore.
Right. It's almost like you have to get out of the moment, because in the moment, you'll always want what's in front of you. We all do. But you have to get out of that moment and project yourself as you into your future, knowing that everything you do today is going to equal the future. And are you happy going in the direction you're going? So you have to make decisions today from the viewpoint of the future you. And that's a skill that people need to learn. It's not something that comes naturally. We're all creatures of, okay, what do I want right now? And Kathryn, I think one of the issues is that the common phrase is, well, do I want that? I don't know if that's always a helpful question versus what do I need in the moment? What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a really useful way to reframe it. In the moment, your brain is going to drive you toward things that are pleasurable. And of course, it's okay to get pleasure from food in moderation and in amounts that work for your body. Of course, like we want to enjoy food. But yeah, in those moments when you feel like you're on the brink of doing something that's harmful, flipping it and asking if this is truly what you need in this moment, it can be such a helpful way to take care of yourself, because just going into that habitual harmful behavior is not self-care. It's not helping with anything. And to be able to really turn your focus on what you need, I think is such a helpful perspective.
Yeah, just flipping the words from do I want this to do I need this, or what do I need right now? That's really what self-care is figuring out what you need and finding a way to give it to yourself. I'm not hungry. Do I need that extra piece of cake or pizza or whatever it is? The answer is no. Your brain thinks you need it because you're just developing a habit of going until you're uncomfortable. But what you need is to figure out what you need. And it may be, who knows, a break, a rest, talking to a friend, connection. It may be just having time to think.
Yeah, and training yourself to take care of your actual needs. And one thing I think is helpful to mention here is that doing the things you suggested, like calling a friend, taking a break, that might not make your urges to overeat go away because they are so habitual, but you're taking care of yourself and you're turning your attention in that moment toward what you actually need. And by doing that over and over, then those urges are going to go away.
Yes, because the more you actually give yourself what you need for some form of you taking care of yourself when you're not hungry, the more you do that and the better you get at that, you then have the strength that when the urges come up, and they still will for a while, that you'll be able to step back and see what's happening and realize that that urge is meaningless. It's not going to fulfill what you really need, and it will be easier to let it go and not act on it.
Something I think is helpful when overcoming any harmful behavior, and I want to specifically talk about it in relation to overeating, is focusing on your why, focusing on why you want this behavior out of your life. And I know that we've addressed this to an extent, but how do you specifically help people stay focused on why they want to overcome the overeating so that they don't fall into that trap of thinking, oh, it's not a big deal, I'll just do it one more time?
I think most people would love to be free from the habits. And I think the operative word is free. They don't want the internal struggle. And wouldn't it be nice to just imagine living your life without that secret struggle going on in your brain all the time about should I or shouldn't I eat that? And to be a natural eater, which means you notice you're hungry, you think about what you want to eat, and you make a choice and you eat without the drama.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's a great way to focus on what you truly want for your life and how to truly take care of yourself. One thing I want to mention, we've been talking about the overeating urges sort of connected to emotions or connected to stress. Now, I think a lot of people can get the perception that that means we're saying you have to solve those problems or you have to learn to cope with those emotions in order to avoid the binging. But I want to talk about the fact that you can resist the urges or dismiss the urges to overeat or to binge, even if you don't have those problems fully figured out, even if you're not coping perfectly with emotions. So can you address that in terms of overeating? Like, how do you help people realize that you can still avoid overeating, even if you feel bad?
Yeah. And you know what? We can't avoid feeling bad. I think that's the truth that people need to work on accepting before they even work on this. Your goal is not to feel happy and light and carefree all the time. There are things that happen in all of our lives that justify feeling bad or sad or angry. It's not always about fixing our feelings. You know, food has nothing to do with your brain creating thoughts that have positive emotions or negative emotions. I think people need to understand what really does make them feel better. And what I think, Kathryn, that really does give you relief, because it's certainly not food, from emotions, is understanding what creates your emotions. We create our emotions with what we're thinking, and knowing deep down inside that you can handle any feelings, even the ones that you don't like. Not all feelings feel good, but feelings can't kill you. And the truth is also that when you don't run away from what you're feeling, if you allow yourself to feel it, it passes. When you eat to feel better, you're muffling the feeling. And then as soon as you stop eating, it's still there. So, you know, if you could just think about, to our listeners, accepting yourself as a human that's going to have a wide range of feelings, a wide range of different types of thoughts that have nothing to do with food, that it's okay sometimes to feel bad. Obviously, we're not talking about someone who feels bad most of the time and might be seriously depressed and might need to get clinical help. We're talking about the average person who feels really good a third of the time, kind of neutral a third of the time, and not so good a third of the time. And if that's you, that's okay. That's normal. You don't have to escape it. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to change it. That is just a part of life. I think if we could accept that, then we could step back and say, well, if that's normal, why am I eating extra food? What does that even have to do with how I feel?
Totally. And I think the more comfortable you are with letting these uncomfortable emotions pass and just having a feeling and letting it fade away and just going through life, all the good and bad, I think it actually helps you become better at dismissing the urges to overeat, because those are a form of an uncomfortable sensation. You have this uncomfortable feeling of wanting to eat. You have this habitual drive, but you can do the same thing with that as you do with an emotion that doesn't feel good. You can allow it to pass through you. You can move on with your life and know that it's going to fade away without you having to do something harmful to yourself.
Absolutely. And if you've been in the habit of overeating for a long time, and especially when you want to get away from an uncomfortable feeling, you're afraid. You're afraid to not eat the food because you're afraid the feeling is going to be so big and so strong and so terrible that it's going to overcome you and you won't be able to handle it. But that's just your fear, your thought, because you're not practiced in feeling a feeling. And that's the hump that you need to get over.
Yeah. And just the more you practice that, the more skilled you get at it. And then you retrain your brain not to automatically drive you toward food when you have an uncomfortable emotion.
Right. Will that uncomfortable emotion still be uncomfortable? Yes. But you can handle it. You can't go through life running away from everything that's uncomfortable, or you're not living your full life. And you can handle, we all can handle more than we think we can.
Yeah. And I think something that people may not realize or fully appreciate is that when you stop acting on these urges, when you stop doing these harmful eating behaviors, it actually makes your life more comfortable overall. Like you get so many benefits. You get to live your life without constantly feeling driven toward food, without the guilt, without the shame. So you actually get to experience a more comfortable life in the long run.
And you feel stronger and more confident in your own skin because you can develop the thought that, okay, I don't like that, but I can handle it, right? We're not saying you have to like all the things that happen to us in life or all the things we hear or see or read about or think about that are coming in the future, but you develop the sense that, all right, I'll deal with what I need to, and this has nothing to do with food.
Yeah. And just the recognition that life isn't going to be perfect and that you don't always have to feel good is, I think, super helpful for people overcoming this. And we've talked a lot about overcoming the overeating, but we also both understand that just like life won't ever be perfect, eating is never going to be perfect either. There are going to be times when you have a bigger appetite, or you may eat more than usual, or you indulge a little bit in food that you enjoy. And that's totally okay. Like when we talk about helping you overcome overeating, we're talking about the type of overeating that's leading to problems for you and leading to pain in your life, like we've been talking about. So to wrap up this conversation, Cookie, I think it will be helpful to explain to the listeners how they can know if overeating is a problem for them, and then also what type of help you offer for it.
Well, I want you listeners to think about your life, to think about whether the results of your overeating are a problem for you. Is it a problem physically? Do you walk around with trauma all the time? Was I good? Was I bad? What did I do? How should I eat? Do I have to compensate for what I just ate? If those thoughts are continuously running through your mind, then I would say that overeating is a problem for you. And if you dread anything negative coming your way, nobody wants negative things. But if you feel like, something's going to come and I know I can't cope with it unless I go out and buy 3 boxes of cookies, then that to me is a problem. And the good thing is, for all these different reasons, the problem of overeating definitely can be solved. So, Kathryn, I want to just share very briefly that the way that I help people with overeating, whether it's just from habit or from emotional eating, is with a group that I have called the Freedom Group. And it's called the Freedom Group because the freedom is what we all want, freedom from food to cope with life. And if you're listening to this podcast with Kathryn in real time when it's published, then the Freedom Group, which opens periodically through the year, is opening. And if you want more information or to get an email from us to know exactly when it's opening and get all the details, go to weightlossmadereal.com/group. And I'm sure Kathryn will give you the link to that in the show notes. And I'd love to talk with you further about letting go of the habit.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cookie. I think all of this has been really helpful just to help people see that even though overeating may not give you those same consequences as binge eating, it's still leading to you not leading the life you want. And it's still interfering with your happiness. It's still interfering with you becoming who you want to be. So I hope you'll check out that link in the show description. And Cookie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Kathryn.
Thank you to everyone listening today. I hope you benefited from this conversation and that the next time your thoughts tempt you toward harmful eating behaviors, you'll be able to recognize them and stay focused on what you truly need. I hope you will join me again, and especially for the next show when I'll tell you more about the second edition of Brain Over Binge. But for now, I want to encourage you and remind you that you have the power to change your brain and live a binge-free life. The Brain Over Binge podcast is produced and recorded by Brain Over Binge Recovery Coaching, LLC. All work is copyrighted by Brain Over Binge Recovery Coaching, LLC, and all rights are reserved. As a disclaimer, the hosts of the Brain Over Binge podcast are not professional counselors or licensed healthcare providers, and this podcast is not a substitute for medical advice or any form of professional therapy. Eating disorders can have serious health consequences, and you are strongly advised to seek medical attention for matters relating to your health. Please get help when you need it, and good luck on your journey. Need more help? You can find all of our current and upcoming options for support at brainoverbinge.com.